Imagine a world where the Federal Reserve, despite being on the brink of a presidential election, decides to cut interest rates in the fall. A bold move, isn't it? Let's delve into the history of the Fed's interest rates. Not too long ago, the Federal Reserve had the rates skyrocketing to a 23-year high. It was a period that saw Wall Street place its hopes on a rate cut, wishes that were born just 2 months ago. However, the world of finance can be a cruel place, and the disappointing inflation readings served as a rude awakening to investors. Their dreams of an imminent rate cut were shattered, replaced with the stark reality that the Federal Reserve could very well delay the first rate cut to the full. These are mere possibilities, projections based on current trends, but they carry significant weight. The Federal Reserve operates on a complex system of economic indicators and predictions, meticulously observing and analyzing the ebb and flow of the market before making a decision. Thus, if the economic data continues to show more of the same, the delay of the first rate cut becomes more and more likely. This scenario is even more intriguing considering the imminent presidential election. The Federal Reserve, a central pillar of the American economy, making a monumental decision such as cutting interest rates during the heat of a presidential race? It's a bold move indeed, but one that is not beyond the realms of possibility. In the grand chessboard of finance, the Federal Reserve is a player that cannot be underestimated. It's a body that has the power to make decisions that can send shockwaves through the economy, decisions that can have far-reaching consequences. So what does the future hold for the Federal Reserve and the interest rates? No one can say for sure. But one thing is certain. In the world of finance, nothing ever goes quite as planned. The Federal Reserve might just surprise us all. With the uncertainty looming, traders are placing their bets. But what is the Federal Reserve saying? As we navigate the unpredictable waters of the economy, traders are eyeing the calendar. The general consensus? The first rate cut is expected to make a grand entrance in June, if not July. This prediction is backed by the futures market, hinting towards the direction of our economic compass. However, the Federal Reserve, the maestro of monetary policy, has a different tune. Fed officials have made it clear that they will only start to cut rates when they are confident that inflation is reined in. Confidence in this context is like the elusive golden snitch in a game of Quidditch. Hard to catch, but game-changing when achieved. But the Fed isn't just watching inflation. They've got their eyes on the broader economic landscape. If the economy takes a sudden nosedive or unemployment starts to climb the corporate ladder, a rate cut could be on the cards. Fed officials have even stated that they won't wait for annual price increases to fall completely in line with the Fed's 2% target. The central bank is essentially playing a high-stakes game of chess, anticipating the market's moves, while also being prepared to change tactics if necessary. Let's not forget, however, that we're dealing with a particularly stubborn opponent: price pressures. Despite the private sector's data showing a steady decrease in rents over the past year, inflation gauges seem to be stuck in a time warp. They are still responding to high shelter costs and a sharp increase in gas prices, which contributed to 60% of the monthly jump in prices in February, according to the latest Consumer Price Index. The Federal Reserve's preferred inflation measure, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, echoes this sentiment. It shows that service prices aren't moderating as much as investors had hoped. So, as we watch this economic drama unfold, one thing is clear. The Federal Reserve is playing a cautious game, waiting for the right moment to make their move. But what's holding the Fed back? The answer lies in something we all deal with: prices. Stubborn price pressures, particularly in housing and services, are the culprits. Despite the fact that rents have been steadily decreasing over the past year, this hasn't significantly impacted inflation gauges. So what's the issue? Here's where it gets a bit tricky. These gauges are still reacting to high shelter costs and a sudden surge in gas prices. These two factors alone contributed to 60% of the monthly jump in prices in February, according to the latest Consumer Price Index. Imagine that, just two elements causing such a substantial leap. Let's add another layer to this. The Fed's preferred inflation measure, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, has similarly shown that services prices haven't been moderating as much as investors had hoped. So the inflation reading is not quite where it needs to be for the Fed to confidently start cutting rates. Several factors could be contributing to this. It's possible that the economy's remarkable strength is keeping some upward pressure on prices. Or it could be that rate increases have not trickled down to the broader real economy just yet. It's like a jigsaw puzzle with a few missing pieces. But here's the real kicker. We don't know what the economy will look like in June, much less in September and November. If inflation stalls, the Fed will be in the tough spot of possibly having to cut rates in the fall, right around the 2024 US presidential election. It's a delicate balancing act. The Federal Reserve is caught between the necessity to cut rates, stubborn price pressures, and potential political implications. It's a bit like walking a tightrope in a gusty wind, isn't it? So, where does this leave us? The inflation puzzle is yet to be solved, and until then, the Federal Reserve waits. As the 2024 US presidential election nears, the Fed faces a paradox. To cut or not to cut? That is the question. Inflation, the bane of economic stability, may stall, presenting the Fed with a tricky situation. They may need to cut interest rates in the autumn, a move that could inevitably elicit political debates. The Federal Reserve, however, is not your typical political player. It is an apolitical institution, guided by data, not by the winds of political change. Yet, it resides in Washington, the heart of political discourse. It is not completely immune to the whispers of election strategies and economic debates. Kathy Bostiansik, the chief economist at Nationwide, paints a vivid picture of this scenario. She acknowledges the Fed's apolitical nature, but also underscores its unavoidable geographical reality. The Fed is supposed to be an apolitical institution, and by and large it is, but they're in Washington, so they're not immune to talks about the election or feeling pressured to some degree, she says. Yet, the Fed is not a leaf to be swayed by every political gust. It is a steadfast institution, anchored firmly in the soil of economic data. Bostiansik echoes this sentiment, stating, "But the Fed has all the cover it needs to cut rates around that time if it's clear that the economic data are driving that decision." With the election looming, the pressure is on. Yet economists are placing their faith in the Fed's ability to maintain its apolitical stance. They believe that the Federal Reserve will make that first cut in the fall if the economic data deems it necessary. It's a paradox indeed. A decision to cut rates could be politically charged, yet the Fed is not a political institution. It's a delicate balance, a tightrope walk on the precipice of economic and political realities. The Federal Reserve, despite the political pressure, is determined to make a decision based on economic data. In the face of uncertainty and speculation, what is the Federal Reserve's stand? Let's zero in on Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, who has consistently been a steadfast advocate for the central bank's apolitical approach to policymaking. Powell has built a reputation around his refusal to be swayed by political winds. He stands firm, refusing to weigh in on what Congress should do, or on other politically charged economic issues. Remember last year when the government was on the brink of defaulting on its debt? Powell remained unflinchingly focused on the economy rather than the political drama. Powell's stance is emblematic of the Federal Reserve's broader philosophy. The central bank's mission is not to play politics, but to make decisions that bolster the U.S. economy. This apolitical approach is deeply ingrained in the institution's DNA, and it's a principle that Powell embodies. Despite the mounting speculation, the potential pressure of the 2024 presidential election, and the persistent clamor from Wall Street, the Fed remains focused on its mandate. That mandate? To foster economic conditions that achieve both stable prices and maximum sustainable employment. Powell's words from a December press conference echo loud and clear. We don't think about politics. We think about what's the right thing to do for the economy. This statement underscores the Federal Reserve's commitment to its mission, irrespective of external pressures or political landscapes. So, as we inch closer to the fall, and as the 2024 presidential election looms large, the Federal Reserve's stand remains clear. The decision to cut interest rates will be driven by economic data, not by political timelines or election cycles. In the end, the Federal Reserve's goal is clear. Do the right thing for the economy, politics aside. The Fed is poised to stay true to its mission, ensuring that the health of the U.S. economy remains its top priority, no matter what the political climate may be.